Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I'm your host, Mary Czarnecki, and today I am thrilled to introduce you to my special guest, Gabe Lullo. He is going to be sharing some insider tips for those marketers out there that I know are in my community who are wondering what and how to get the edge in this next quarter. So for you, we're going to be introducing you to a special mindset that Gabe definitely thinks is a key to success. So thank you so much, Gabe, for being part of the show and for being here as our special guest today.
Mary, I'm a big fan of yours. Thanks so much for having us. And we're super excited to be here. And yeah, I think it's going to be a great conversation. And I'm really excited that your audience is going to hear this. It's going to be a fun one. Let's get into it.
All right. Now, before we get started, I know there are people who are actually probably tuning into this episode specifically because you're my guest. So we won't worry about them. They already know you. But there might be people meeting you for the first time. So could you just give those people just a quick little understanding of who you are and the problem that you solve, just to give context to what we're going to be digging into today?
Yeah, so I've been running and building sales teams, departments, and organizations for the past 2 decades, hence the gray hair. Stressful job, but I will say that we have found a way about 10, 15 years ago to start this company called Alley-oop, where we specialize specifically on one thing, which is the sales development function of the go-to-market strategy. And back then, it was only dealing with sales leaders, VPs of sales, or CEOs that we were our point of contact. But over the years, we've now worked much more with marketing, right? Where I would say half of our point of contacts are CMOs and VPs of marketing, and the other half is still heads of revenue, heads of sales. We've helped over 1,600 companies build out their sales development team. We're the second largest company, what we do out of 2000, but with all those numbers put aside, we just really have a lot of passionate for the BDR and SDR function. And we make 11 million cold calls a year. So we're the crazy people that do the hard work. And that's a little bit about us.
I love that. Yeah. You know what it's like to have someone say no to you, right? Which
Yes, yes,
terrifies people. It really does. So
100%.
So let's get into it, because when someone thinks about making cold calls and hearing that no, if this is not something that you're experienced with or you've been trained on, it can be incredibly intimidating. So one of the things I've heard you say that I want to dig into is why marketers, especially marketing leaders and CMOs, actually need to adopt that mindset that an SDR, right, that a sales development rep actually does. So why is that so important to take that mindset on?
There's just been this two teams at war. I don't know if you've heard this at all, but salespeople are throwing spears over the wall to the marketing team, and marketing's throwing spears over the wall to the sales team. And sales is blaming marketing for bad leads, and marketing's blaming sales for not closing their leads. And so there's always been this at war mindset, which is interesting because they both want the same thing, which is growth and revenue. So they should be working collectively, not against each other. So we've found that the sales development function has really been the marriage counselor between the two. It's the glue that keeps it together. And I think adopting both sales needs to adopt more sales development. And I think marketing needs to adopt more sales development mindset so we can all play on the same team, right? And so we can all have the same common goal. If you think about it, 11 million cold calls doesn't just mean appointments and revenue booked. It also means a ton of market research, a ton of understanding if there's a product market fit, a ton of understanding on what the market is actually telling us, good, bad, and ugly, right? Do we have the right message? Do we have the right pricing? Do we have the right ideal client profile? All of those things that marketers love seeing our data that is telling them all of those things, which has nothing to do with revenue, which has nothing to do with closed business, with nothing to do with how many appointments on the calendar. Again, taking the sales hat off and putting the marketing hat on, which is, intent, timing, who the market is, what should be building messaging around. That's all coming from these conversations we're having. And that is all in our data. And we have to put that marketing hat on sales development because it is giving so much insightful information to make those big, audacious marketing investments that are needed from those conversations that we're having.
And I think that's such a good reminder, because when I was in brand management at Johnson & Johnson, one of my favorite bosses ever really drilled into the fact that we can't just talk to each other. Go have lunch with someone from sales, go have lunch with someone from market research, right? they have that voice of the customer. They're on the front lines. They're hearing what's working, right? Go take someone from our 1-800 customer service line that's on the back of every package we sell. Go take them out for lunch and ask what they talk to people about today. And it can't just be us talking to us. So that's what I'm hearing you say, is that there's richness there that maybe is going untapped by a lot of brands.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like marketing teams come into our client calls and they say, we have this really great idea. And I'm like, wow, it does sound like a great idea, but does it work? What is the market telling you? Is there any data to prove this out? Not to be devil's advocate, but just to verify if the idea is a good idea. And I think sometimes we just come up with these great ideas, but we don't actually bring it to market to test it out. So everything we do is A/B testing with marketers. Everything. Is this the right approach? Is this the right message? Is this the right email? Is this the right objection? Is this the right conversation? Should we be saying this to this exact persona? Should we be saying this to that persona? And we're always A/B testing everything so we can aggregate that data. And then when we do get these cool ideas that come across the table, we can say, you know what, that actually is a great idea because we have this much data to prove that this could possibly work, and still test it even though it's a good idea. So to your absolute point, that's why we feel this the way we feel. And yeah, we have to make sure that we're collaborating and talking. Sales has to talk to marketing and marketing has to talk to sales. And when they do, and when we do see that companies do that, it always is for the better and it always is for the success and the growth of the company.
Now, if there's someone listening to this who's, okay, I'm down, Gabe, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to build the bridge, to have the conversations. I just don't even know where to get started. What's the first step if this isn't something that they're currently practicing? How do you even get that started, especially if you might have to sell it up the chain?
Yeah, I think it's not just selling it up the chain. I think it actually starts at the top, right? It has to be the culture of the company. People talk about all the time about culture, and it's so important. But usually they're looking at it for employment benefits, or whether they're looking at it for PTO policy, they're looking at it for just the ability to have an open door, open Zoom policy, like we like to call in our new remote world. But I think it's more about, are the departments of the companies actually in a positive culture? Is the CMO and is the CRO talking, or is it the same person, or do they even have a room for them to collaborate? So if you're a founder CEO, make sure that's happening on your team. If you're having to bring this up to your chain of command, let's start the conversation now. But it's about really making sure that they are working together, or being in a company that has that philosophy is really how I would approach maybe moving into that company or not. Because to your point, it's so important. Again, if they're always at odds and blaming in the blame game scenario, I never see success out of that. I always see very marginal success, if any at all.
No, that's a good point. So staying away from the blame game. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that's interesting about that, and I'm interested to know how you deal with this, is if we're recognizing the fact that it's not just about number of calls booked and direct revenue as a measure of success, that there's also some of this additional bonus, yeah, I guess you could say bonus or not bonus, but this intelligence, this audience intelligence that we're gathering from these conversations. How does that then relate to how your SDRs or BDRs are actually incentivized? Because people obviously do what they're paid and incentivized to do. Does that factor into then how you actually structure the role for the BDR or the SDR?
Yeah. So we are one of the only companies that do what I'm about to tell you. And also, everyone thought I was nuts for doing it. And I got a lot of pushback from a lot of people internally and externally. And now our number one competitor does exactly what we do. So it's interesting how it came full circle, but we don't score leads based on booked appointments only. Many agencies only look at that as their only and North Star. And I will say that is the old way of business in my approach. We want to really classify leads. Now, they do this already in the pipeline post demo, right? You classify and you score and you forecast and you look at pipeline and you look at when that's going to close. And every sales org is fanatical about, once the account executive does the demo, what happens after that, and scoring all that. But very rarely is it scored for demo, other than just having it be an MQL, which again is a very vague term in itself. So with that being the case, here's how we score it. We take people through our pipeline of prospecting, and we score it at hot, warm, nurture, DQ. Hot is a booked demo, so we just talked about it. Booked a demo on the appointment within 2 weeks. So we're fanatical about not booking anything after 2 weeks, because they don't show anyway. So 2 weeks, hot lead, booked demo. Then we do warm lead and we clarify what a warm lead is. Now, it's not an MQL. This is an actual conversation. It's not someone who just filled out a form. This is someone we actually know at the company, does what it is they say they do or online says they do, and are extremely interested, but are not ready to book today, but they are willing to book this quarter. So we just say 2 months. And we introduce them to the sales team as a qualified lead with an introduction email, and we bring them together on LinkedIn as well. We also do nurture and we do DQs and we segment them out as well. So we're very clear about what we're delivering in the form of leads to our clients, but it's not just a book meeting as the only deliverable. And so once they see that pipeline of the prospecting funnel, then they can actually start treating those leads differently and intentionally, and hopefully it turns into revenue, which usually does.
And you highlight something too that I think is worth calling out, especially for the marketers that listen to this, right? Because we forget about the recency importance or that 2-week window that you were talking about for especially the hot leads. As marketers, we're planning like next year's holiday events this year. We always think about things being so much further out. I feel like that importance of recency or kind of that impact on the short term is also something worth kind of thinking about too. How do you make sure that you're taking advantage of that? What do the clients that you work with that do that well, what do they have already built, or what systems do they have that allow them to capitalize on, hey, I'm interested now, and if you're not serving me, I'm going to go to the next.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I didn't fully answer your last question. I just want to say, just to put a pin in it, our SDRs are incentivized, to your initial question, on all of those types of leads. So they're not just incentivized on hot leads, they're also incentivized on warm leads as well. So even if it's not a meeting that's actually on the schedule and it's a warm handoff, we call it, that is also an incentivized bonus opportunity for our reps and to turn them into. Now, it's not as valuable, I would say, when it comes to the financial piece of it, but there's two cliches here, right? Timing is everything in business. We've always heard that all the time, but let's really unpack that, because that's what this is all about. If you look at BANT, which is budget, authority, need, and timing, the last one is timing. So we have to really, as an SDR, our role is to find out the timing of this scenario. Because do we want to get into a budgetary conversation? No, that's for sales. We don't want to disqualify on a cold call or a first call, I like to call it, budget, right? But we do want to make sure they have the authority, or they're an influencer, or they're a decision maker. We do want to make sure they have a need for sure. We don't want to put leads in the hands of a salesperson who has zero pain or need or solving of a solution of any kind. But the last most important one is that timing piece, to your point. So again, it's all about that timing. We want to make sure that we're figuring that out, and we want to let the client know, hey, listen, this is a lead that you don't want to push too fast right now, because if you do, they're going to run the other way.
Yeah.
And we all been outbound prospected before. And the big reason why people don't like cold calling, to your point, is the rejection. Big reason is not rejection because they're not interested or they don't need it. It's rejection because the activity or the pressure you're putting on them to get them to say yes. So if you take the pressure off and you ask the right questions to figure out that timing, and you separate them based on timing, then you're not going to be as annoying or pushy, and you're going to be able to hit them when the irons strike when the iron's hot.
That's such a good point. No, I appreciate you calling that out. Yeah, that's great. So Thanks. When you think about the timing, because I think, like you said, it relieves some of that pressure. I now am not necessarily getting into a budget conversation that really needs to come later. Now we know that there's a need, and we know that there's the right timing. What are some of the best ways to make sure that you're identifying the need? Because I talk about that a lot from the marketing side of things, is that I don't need in your marketing messaging you to tell me all the things that make you special until I get that you're going to be able to help me. Is that also something that you have to factor in, or that you do factor in then in these calls as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard because marketing is showing value, showing features, showing this, showing all the positives of something. Yet everyone knows in the sales world, and if you don't, this is the number one thing salespeople are trained. Your job is to ask questions, right? The best people that are salespeople are the best question askers. So it's very difficult, right? We're showing value, and then we're asking questions. So how do we blend those two things, which are quite opposite, right? So we have to, in that sales development side, in that first call, is really to start that question asking process to determine need. And need truly is pain, right? And sometimes we got to put some salt in the wound to expose that pain, right? To make them feel it a little bit so they have urgency to solve it, because not everyone has that urgency. And how difficult is that to send out mass emails to ask questions? It's impossible. That's why I feel like email is not the way to do this. Is it one channel? Sure. Is it the only channel? Absolutely not, especially in this day and age where AI and filters and tools are blocking emails left and right. So asking those questions is where that need is starting to be figured out, and asking really strategic questions is the way to get that done. So knowing that balancing where we're asking enough questions to find out need, but not too many questions where we're actually doing a demo. I always say sales development is the trailer to the movie. Marketing is the billboard. Marketing is the advertisement. Then you have the movie, which is sales, doing the demo itself and closing deals and collecting the money at the ticket stand. But the in between is sales development. And that is the 1 minute trailer. That is telling them a little bit exciting, positive, happy, talking about the great things we do, but also actually asking, hey, do you want to see this movie? Are you interested in drama? Do you like horror movies? And asking those types of things to determine what's the best movie. And that's where we sit.
Is that where, so one of the last thing I wanted to dig into was the leaky funnel. So does what you were just talking about, the dynamics and how these things work together well in an effective system, is that where sometimes the leaky funnel syndrome pops up? Is that there's not a clear understanding of what these different pieces of the funnel is actually supposed to do. So we're trying to make the SDR do something that really should be done by sales, or we're trying to make marketing do something that really should be done in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. I still prescribe to the assembly line of sales. Like I feel like we have to take the Henry Ford approach to sales, right? And the go to market, I like to call it more than sales because it includes marketing. It even includes customer success, right? I think salespeople do maybe too much customer success. They're promising things, right? There's another, by the way, war that's going on, and that's sales telling the customer one thing and then customer success telling them that's actually not true, right? So there's this whole funnel, and I feel all of us work in this assembly line an approach. If one piece of the assembly line doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't get built. And that's how we have to take it. Everyone has to obey their role, and most importantly, know their role, but also know everyone else's role. If you don't know everyone else's role, can't trust what you're doing, because you're not going to trust what they're going to do next. And so it's this assembly line. And so that's where sales development lives. And it's that handoff approach to your point. And that's where it becomes very leaky if people don't know their role, and more importantly, know what everyone else's role is and when to give them the next baton in the relay. The other thing that I have to mention just a little bit about sales development and in marketing is that when you're approaching it from that point of view, you also are having a lot of things fall through the cracks because sales doesn't follow up accordingly. They're always thinking about the low hanging fruit. It's a timing point. They're thinking about, what can I close now? What can I close now? I need a commission. I need to pay I need to buy food for my family. So if that's their mindset, they're going to leave away all these other leads that can be absolutely nurtured. And is it marketing's job to do that? And if so, how? So sales development has a place not just for passing the baton, but also reinvigorating and nurturing those leads and calling back those old prospects and staying relevant within that prospect's day to find out that timing and then pass it to sales. So that's another big piece of the leaky funnel that we talk about.
Well, because I imagine that re-engagement campaign could be incredibly lucrative, like you said, at the right time, just because it wasn't a now and maybe not the priority for sales because of, like you said, commission pressure. But if we just forget about that whole other bucket, then, we're just missing out on that richness, that potential that was already identified.
Absolutely. A really quick story to save on time is we had an SDR call a new CMO of a $64 billion company. And it's a triggering event for us. A new CMO, they want to make an impact. They want to solve some things, fix some things. So we call them up and say, hey, congratulations on your new role. This is what we do. We'd love to see if we can help you fix your go-to-market from a sales development perspective. He took the cold call. He was very eager and excited. But guess what? I just started. I'm trying to get my legs underneath me. I'm literally meeting my teammates this week. I don't know anything about them, my direct reports. give me 90 days and we'll circle back. Now, if that was passed over to an account executive, would they have really circled back? So we did, right? We followed up, we circled back. We didn't pass it to the account executive yet. It's still in our world. And 90 days later, he appreciated the call, but this is not a joke. He was already on a 2-week PTO, and then he was 2 weeks on conferences and events. So he had a whole month of off on the road. Okay, give me a call in another 45 days. We call him another 45 days. If you add all that up, it's about almost a 5 months of trying to just get this guy excited. 5 months later, he sat down, saw what we do, signed up, and we closed a $64 billion company, and we're an agency, so we're not that big. But at the end of the day, that all happened because the SDR stayed on top of it.
Yeah.
And it was about timing is everything, right? And that's how it works.
No, but also the persistence, right? And treating them like a human, that this isn't just one more number on a call sheet. This is someone that's a relationship we're building.
And by the way, no offense to marketers, and I know there's a lot listening, an email drip sequence would never get that done. No offense, right? Like putting him in an email drip sequence is not going to get the CMO. By the way, the company's Ingram Micro is going to not get him excited to meet with us. So that's why it's so intentional, and it's very, again, non-pressure. It's about timing. We understood there was a need for sure, but we also wanted to not put too much pressure on it, or they, like I said, run the other way.
No, I love it. I love a good email drip sequence, but they can't do everything. And the human
exactly.
contact and that care of just, look, I'm following up with you.
Yeah.
I understand your situation. Just even that, I can imagine had an impact on that. Yes.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Gabe, for spending the time with us. I know everyone's got a very full sticky note coming out of today, taking notes on the tips that you shared. Is there any last minute, what would you say, sticky note writer downer, if they remember nothing else about today's episode, what you would give them as a piece of advice that they should be taking away?
Yeah, just know this, like people say, to your point in the earlier part of the call, there's going to be a lot of rejection. And just know that's both in marketing and both in sales. And when I hire a new SDR that joins our team, to get them ready and willing to accept that rejection, I just say, listen, if you bat 300 in baseball, you make millions of dollars a year, millions, which means you're out 7 times out of 10. Right. So if you're out 7 times out of 10, you bat 300 in baseball, you're 30%, you're failing if you were in school, right? You're doing horribly if you were measured in any other type of measurement. But in this world, that would be a dynamite career. And so that's how you have to approach it. And I think that's the best thing to do, both on the sales and marketing side. Like all of these very things we talk about work effectively, but you're only going to get about 3 out of 10. And more, you can't be more than a particular genius could go past like 3. Okay. So just know that's okay.
Amazing. Everyone write that down. Make sure you follow up, drop your comments, make sure that you're following up with us here, wherever you're watching or listening to this today. Now, I know, Gabe, you've given some people lots of good light bulbs today, but there might also be people who have more questions than answers coming out of today. We're going to include your links and how to get in touch with you wherever people are connecting with us for this episode. But if you were going to say one place that people should definitely go to right now, if they want to get in touch, learn more about what you do, where would that one location be that they should go to?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn. I post twice a day, every day from my profile. We have a massive amount of influencers that work at my company that post a lot as well. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn that come out every other week. We have a lot of videos that are there. I have my own podcast as well. And I'm very responsive on LinkedIn if you want to connect directly. So that is a great free resource of all things and communication.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, definitely follow up on LinkedIn with Gabe if you want to answer any more questions. And thank you again for being our guest today on the Sticky Note Marketing Show.
Thank you so much, Mary.
All right. Thank you guys for watching and listening wherever you're joining us from today. Make sure you like, subscribe, let us know what you think in the comments wherever you're joining us from. And I will see you on the next episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show.